Evening, everybody. So reps and sets, how many should you do? This is the longer video from the Instagram post. So how many reps should you do? The answer is not all that simple until you understand the prerequisites below. Muscle hypertrophy is usually what we're weight training for. Hypertrophy is effectively muscle growth. That's a posh name for it. It's a thickening of the contractile fibers within the muscle. So imagine within your muscle, there's fibers what run in parallel like that, and then they're contained within fascia and outer connective tissue. And in between all of this is a fluid around the muscle, like crystallized fluid. That's where the water comes from. You are, 60% water. It's plasma. It's not fluid as such. It's quite thick and goopy, like egg yolk. So we're trying to either increase the thickness of the contractile fibers. We don't actually grow more. These just get thicker. So they pull better and shorten better with more force. Or we're trying to get more plasma. They usually happen in conjunction. The types of hypertrophy are called myofibrillar and sarcoplasmic, respectively. So for muscle hypertrophy to happen, you need to have graded exposure, or you need some exposure to certain conditions of work, and then you need to fuel your body with protein and adequate calories for a positive nitrogen balance, and then you recover by sleeping and resting the worked muscle. The larger contractile units, aka motor units, are made up of fast twitch muscle fibers. They are more powerful muscle fibers, but they fatigue quicker. They only are worked when the load is heavy enough, or kicking when the muscle comes close to fatigue, and we'll see why this is important in a sec. There's a threshold to conserve energy and not use these by your body, as they take a lot of time to recover. Okay, so all good, clear. So effective reps. Now, unless you're a complete beginner, during the set, we are trying to get through the repetitions in the set until we get to the effective reps. These are the ones that give us what we need and the training stimulus, what we previously mentioned we need. That's the first component. We know by the nature of Wolff's law that tissues need adequate testing and stimulus to change, but then they will supercompensate to the demands placed upon them. So our body seeks efficiency and homeostasis, meaning it's a lazy fucker and it doesn't change unless it has to. Muscle is very metabolically demanding, meaning it takes energy to keep it there, and therefore it's only gained and maintained if it's absolutely necessary. That's why you need a continuous training cycle. And if you stop training, you can lose the muscle. So resistance training isn't just damage, but it's a stimulus to start a change. It's kicking your desired muscles' ass in a controlled way to start the signaling, then the supercompensation and growth. Each cycle of signaling repair effectively is what forms a planned program or a training cycle. Effective reps then are simply signals of change, and an effective training program is the one that signals the most change in the most frequent and optimal way. The last 5 reps, for reference, are before technique fails, are classed as the effective reps. So we're pretty much just getting through all the reps to get to the last 5. We don't need to do all 5 of the last reps, but at least a couple of them. Here's the caveats. So compound exercises, which are dangerous to fail, such as back squats or bench press on your own, incline bench press, should be taken close to failure, but cautiously. Or more reps should be left in reserve, i.e. leave 2 or 3 reps from failure, and you can still have a very effective set of 6 back squats, for example. Use a good spotter who knows what they're doing. Otherwise, you can literally die if you're doing the wrong thing. You can get really hurt. Protective equipment like weight belts and the capture arms and the racks for safety. Squat inside them or bench inside them if you're on your own. Upper body pulling exercises can be taken a lot closer to failure. Use them more safely, i.e. if you're doing dumbbell rows, chest supported, or a lat pull down, you just won't be able to pull the weight as far, and it's not going to be some sort of catastrophic event if you fail. You can take it further, it's safer. Pushing exercises, however, you could end up stuck under the bar. We just said this bench press, or you could lean too far back during an overhead press and overextend the back. A lot of lifters have actually broken the back in this way. Isolated exercises can be usually taken closer to failure, more so on machines. This does not mean you should be snotting and convulsing. Just the reps cannot be formed exactly the same and they're really slowing down. That is classed as technique failure. Only rarely is it wise to try and take an exercise beyond failure and clean technique. This is a little bit beyond the scope of this video, but here we are. Junk volume and reps, they can be classed as all physical work which is not effective reps or sets. If you're being really pedantic, you could even say it's all the reps before the effective reps, but you need to do them to get to them. Okay. If you're looking to maximize muscle gain, excessive cardio will basically fatigue your body and hinder the ability to achieve best stimulus for muscle growth through just being tired in the week and your body not having enough recovery ability to hit every goal and every adaptation needed. Ultimately, we want the Goldilocks sets most of the time, so it's not too hard but not too easy, just hard enough. The rep range we aim for will usually dictate the weight you're then going to pick. Okay, when we're testing out maxes on occasion, it may be the other way around. We don't waste energy on non-intentional sets is the point here. Effective volume and sets. Every time we bank a set which contains effective reps only, we usually will measure this throughout the week and get a total. We can this way we can target more workload to weaker areas to bring them up and only seek to maintain stronger areas. After you have accrued newbie gains, that's the first 3 months of training, where pretty much everything you what's going on there? Everything you touch pretty much turns to gold. You'll need to pick a few areas to focus on and a few what you're going to maintain, or the rest what you're going to maintain. Okay. 3 to 4 hard sets per week or effective sets per week will maintain. For sets to focus, 5 to 15 will be enough for most people. And for a short period, you can even go 15 to 25 sets. Standardization of reps, okay? So, simply put, this means you've locked in the variable over how you're going to perform and measure what one rep is, okay? So, if you can do a maximum of 20 push-ups, for example, before failing, and you did it on a tempo of 3 seconds down, 1 second up, so 4 seconds per rep, and the next time you do it, the week after to test again, you go maximum speed, and you might score 35 reps. If you measured the force output over time, or the amount of time it actually took you to fail, it'd probably be about the same. So even though more reps have been completed, you've not actually improved. Okay, does that make sense? So essentially, standardization of reps is in agreement with yourself and how you perform exercise and classify failure. Standardization part 2. This means you are using clean form and not changing as the weight gets heavier or you come close to fatigue. That way, you're not actually doing the same rep. So it's classed as a different exercise in my eyes. That means you squat the same depth, for example, and if the movement changes, that's also, I said that. And pretty much you're just being honest with yourself. Isolated exercises, so single joint exercises. it's nearly always better to do 8+ reps and make the thing more difficult rather than just needing to add reps or weight. Reason being, the force is only crossing one main joint and fewer tendons are taking the load. Tendons and connective tissue and joints are commonly the weak point or the vulnerable link in the chain for injury. So if we're working too heavy with low reps, one rep may be completed, then the next rep may be way too difficult, and it could cause more damage to the area than desired. Okay. So examples of isolation exercises are below. So chest flies, side raises, bicep curls, tricep extensions, calf raises, leg curls, leg extensions. It's worth noting that no exercise you can truly isolate work to a given muscle, but with tweaks and angles, we can certainly target the area. Okay, there'll always be a muscle that's helping stabilize to some extent. Compound exercises examples would be like squats, lunges, bench press, lat pull downs, and deadlifts. We generally won't push these as often or as far into failure for the risk-reward factor. Because this can really fatigue you or it can risk more injury. This is where experience, however, movement selection and expertise comes in. So if you're a guy who's really experienced, you might be able to try and really smash yourself with some real gnarly shit, like some drop sets on squats and deadlifts and things. It's not for beginners. And if you're watching this video, this may not apply to you. In all fairness, this is not really for advanced people. These guys will sort of know this either intuitively or know most of it for an idea. So a note on failure, how we're going to classify that. So there's hyped up failure, where you're screaming, slapping your chest like a fucking gorilla. You're full of caffeine, carbs, pre-workout, all that Jack 3D off your nut. Yeah, you're going absolutely ham. Failure may be further on, and you may be able to go beyond your previous capabilities. But you're in a different mode, in a different zone. This is why people like powerlifters can lift more in competition because of the hyped up. Okay. Relaxed failure. It's pretty much how it sounds. So without being too stimulated in the full body, you can chip away more in this mode for more sessions, and that's where you're going to be most. The above the hyped up failure can just fucking knacker you out if you've got a full-time job and the rest of it. So it's normally not the best idea to go absolutely crazy all the time. Okay, mainly for testing. Fatigue and difference through the weeks. So session to session or week to week, you can be a bit stronger or weaker. If you've eaten poorly, you're a little bit ill, you're stressed, you've had bad sleep, new baby. Fatigue will mask your fitness. Okay, so you'll take the sets into the effective reps for that session. However, on that occasion, it might be at a lesser weight or it might not take as many reps to get to the effective sets, if that makes sense. If this keeps happening, say like 3, 4, 5 sessions in a row, and it's not expected, for example, you deliberately cut calories, you may need to reevaluate as to why. Okay. Rest periods and desired outcomes. Studies show that the most effective time taken for rest periods is as little as needed to be fully ready to go again. This can be experimented with and will be very individual. Women tend to be ready to go again more quickly, as do people who are really healthy and with a strong cardiovascular base and aerobic system. In simple terms, the heavier the relatively load to be lifted, the lower the repetitions per set will be, and the longer the rest should be. The creatine phosphate energy system is the physiology behind this. This, without going too deep into it, is how your body seeks to get energy for the highest energy demanding work, like sprinting or a maximum jump or a maximum lift. This is the quickest way to get energy outputted and utilized. Okay, so this mobilizes energy very quickly. However, it runs out of steam very quickly, and it might take 3 to 5 minutes to replenish. hence the longer rest periods for the low rep stuff. So low reps under 5 will gear more towards neurological benefits than muscle hypertrophy. It's more a skill you are learning to recruit the most amount of the existing musculature and the most force, not really a good signal for hypertrophy on its own. It's not the best. And there's the drawbacks, what we're going to see in a minute. 5 to 15 reps, 3 minutes down to potentially 1 minute, respectively, is usual. 5 to 15 reps will contract the muscle for long enough to use the lactic acid energy system. Eventually, the lactic acid will block the contractile elements and weaken and slow, and eventual failure will pursue. The lower the load, the less time it will take to replenish and buffer the lactate. Also, if you've got a better cardiovascular system, that will buffer it quicker. It's one of the mechanisms of fitness. In very high rep sets, the idea is more continuous and enduring fatigue resistance. It's hard to say when complete failure has been met if you take small pauses in the set, for example. So that's where it can be important to standardize if you're going to just do it in one continuous cadence. We rest usually the least in these high rep sets, as we are trying to mainly cause a pump and as maximum pain and blood flow into the area. You'd only rest more if you want to keep the weight lifted the same for more total workload. Say you're going for like 20 rep maxes or something and you want to keep trying to keep that up. You could fully recover if you wanted more. 2 minutes down to 30 seconds is normal for this range, however. Now, the reps, given all that information above, this should now make sense why programs look as they do. So low reps, 1 to 5 reps, yeah. You can grow from this rep range. You 100% can. Using compounds and such, you can. However, it's more indirect and long-term. What I mean by that is strength trickles down. So if you get stronger for a 1 rep, you should be lifting more for your 6 reps and your 8 reps and your 15s. It'll trickle down and help. Okay. A late one. So more rest period is needed and more warm-up time to ramp up the weight for these sets. So sessions will take longer. In effect, simply put, it's not very time efficient. It's quite harsh on the body in more ways than one. The joints really take a hammering, and you need rest if you're always in this rep range. Like eventually you need to rotate out of it, or you can start to hurt yourself. Failure within this rep range will not coincide with a strong muscle burn, just an inability to lift it. So you can lift it on your 2nd rep and then your 3rd you just completely collapse. So you need to be cautious and get experienced spotters and make sure you keep yourself safe. I mean, I always look a bit weird. God, I'm tired. Right, so failure within this rep range. I've just said that. For most of us, the range is not necessarily to explore most of the time. Usually, if you've got a coach and people spot you and things, it's okay, providing your form's good and you're healthy and you're ready to go. Go for it. Low, medium reps, so 5 to 8 reps. Really nice rep range for this, especially for compounds. It's good for growth, especially those who've primarily been doing like old school bodybuilding or just getting the pump. It's nice to rotate back into this rep range, and you usually explode with some good growth if you've not been attacking this rep range. It's great for barbell moves, especially the heavier compound loading exercises. Good to do at the start of the session. Generally, the lower the reps, the more close to the start of the session it'll be. You usually go higher reps in cardio towards the end. It's usually a more effective way to go. It'll produce a good amount of total strength gains and also hypertrophy. I said that. So good for exercises where you can make small incremental increases, e.g. like 0.5 kilo, 1.25 kilo fractional plates. I'll be having these instead of vapes, protein yogurts. Suck on this all day. Not adult dummies. So not so much for isolation exercises. Say side raises, lateral raises. You'd want a wider range of reps because sometimes it's really hard to go up to the dumbbell size above unless you've got like 1 kilo increments. it can be difficult to increase the weight within a tight range like this. So you could say, so side raises, you could do 15 kilos for 3 times 8, but you might not get 2 clean reps with the 17s, if that makes sense. You'll mainly do this range early in the session. Yep, said that. Repeat, like a parrot, like a parrot. Medium, 8 to 15. This is the range where most of your work for hypertrophy will land in. It's essentially the sweet spot on where the fuck 3 sets of 10 come from. Okay, because you can lift a decent amount of weight relatively still, and you can do quite a lot of work and sets and reps. So you still get a good pump at a fairly heavy weight. Medium rest periods are 2 minutes, so it's just a good mix of everything. You can generally do a lot more workload in a lot of session time, and like the sets of 10 don't really knock the fuck out your breathing and general fatigue. There's no real downsides apart from people get stuck and only then use this rep range because they think it's the best. You need to explore out and rotate around rep ranges, and that comes into more programming, which is a bit beyond the scope of this video, but it will come during the other videos. Ooh. Medium to high reps, so 15 to 30. This range will likely be equal or a close second to the 8 to 15 in the total amount of work you do. I do a lot more work in this range now because I never did in the past. But now I'm rotating back into more medium groups. And it's going good. Over 20 repetitions has health benefits. Oh, let's get geeky. So satellite cells are these things what float about in your blood and your muscles and tissues and shit. Like little satellites. Boop. You know, Apollo 13 shit. Satellite. So these cells donate nuclei, which is nucleus, if you can remember back to biology. And it donates nuclei to the muscles in sets of high reps usually. When muscles have more nuclei, they have more potential to grow and thicken. This is part of having good genetics for muscle building and the mechanism of muscle memory. When you've stopped training and you go back to training, you usually have got more nuclei left around the muscle. So when you rotate back to the lower reps, your growth tends to explode, like we've just said. Higher reps help release growth factors, which are therapeutic for joint cartilage and repair, so regenerative. So always a bonus. They can play a part in rehabbing pain joints and injuries, along with soft tissue work, isometrics, and graded rehab. Some endurance benefits are to be had because it's further up towards 30 and beyond that, and the load's getting less. It's more like an enduring exercise, so you do get some of the lactic acid buffering benefits, and you will get a wicked pump usually in this range as well. The downsides to this range, if it's done with compounds like squats and deadlift, military press, it can really tire out the full body and not just the target muscle, meaning when you move on to the exercises later in the session, you're just too fucking tired and the muscle hasn't failed, you're just too tired. So higher reps will come later in the session with less full body taxing movements, ideally. If you're training for mixed goals, however, like CrossFit, you're doing it for your sport, your running, your rugby, whatever. These can be very good to have endurance and fitness benefits. However, it's not a purely hypertrophy goal. Beginners, kids, and low attention span individuals like ADHD, Jack here, may get bored and just try to get to the end of the set, so your form and technique may slip. Much above 30 means that the weight may not be of enough resistance to trigger a large stimulus. Here we are, so high 30 plus superset mad shit can be very harsh and used sparingly because there's a lot of mini failures within the set and it can be fairly damaging. So it's hard to say when you've fully failed, so you just fail, which is quite harsh. It can be good for those people who are over-routined and very rigid individuals to break them out of plateaus. So I do use these, and the more experienced they are, these are really good to throw in and just surprise motherfuckers with them, basically. And if you always do this rep range, the need to grow contractile size will decrease the higher up you go. It's more for shock value, and your body will favour increasing adaptations for endurance if you just do this all the time, such as producing more mitochondria and growing more capillaries into the muscle, rather than increasing the forceful contractile elements in thickness. So I've just fucking waffled. You may need to watch this on a slower speed or go back a couple of times. But if you get this, like, you're really gonna fucking bang your training out a lot better from now on. So applying this knowledge, if you're trying to get stronger and fitter without growing larger, you could reverse engineer this. So you could do a lot of reps below 5 and then a lot of more above 30. This can be good for strength and endurance or strength and conditioning for those competing in weight categories. You just don't eat surplus protein, and the calories at maintenance or below will stop you growing. You know, if you don't feed a plant, it won't grow. This is just a signaler. But if you're not eating enough and you're doing weight training, you usually find that you get stronger, but you're not growing a lot. So that's a clue as well if you're trying to grow. Rep ranges have got used to, you'll get used to them fairly quickly. But smart lifters who are initiated into all this shit usually have in the head multiple movements and they can just rotate around stuff and use these guides rather than hard and fast rules. So they'll know that they curl the 25s for 4 sets of 8 to 10 roughly hammer curls. And then they might curl the 17s for 3 times 10 to 15. And they might curl the 15s or 12s for, you know, that. And they, as they get to the top of the rep range, then they can increase the weight. It's nice to have wide sweeping rep ranges. If you're really hurting that day or you're really sore or you're beating up, you can just do the lightweight session version of what you're doing and do more reps. You can signal effectively at any weight and at any range as long as it's relatively difficult and you're getting into these effective sets. If you're feeling strong that day, they may try and push to the next size up for the 8 to 10. Ultimately, we're trying to progressively overload our total workload. So the sets times the reps times the weights. Once we're going up for each movement. Some moves, it's less optimal to try and increase the weight or reps. So pauses, dropping back down to super high reps and doing these weird rest pause drop sets, weird countdown gauntlet things. These can break through plateaus and progress you. These can really explode growth quite quick. It's magic to see. Ultimately, a lot of this is a science, but also an individual art. Some people are said to have more slow twitch muscle fibers or more fast twitch muscle fibers, but ultimately we've all got a variety. So it's good to experiment. If there's one range, what will grow you better by doing more of it during your training cycles, this is very valid. So, but before you think you're the next Body Van Gogh, you need to understand the current thinking and everything inside the box. This is part of the thinking inside the box before you can start thinking outside of it. You've got to know the full box. Otherwise, you can just be fucking way off doing some mad shit. Structured variety is the key. So usually 50 to 70% of the previous week wants to be set and you want to be repeating it and trying to beat it or beat it after a couple of weeks at least. And then the last 50 or 70% can be some varied stuff and you can rotate around to keep yourself entertained, but within the parameters of the variables you've picked. Some of it can be freestyle with the above rules and guides in mind. Just don't fucking do 3 sets of 10 on everything forever. That's all I want from this. See you later.